Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rundown, where we talk about 2A news and conservative views. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. Now, normally I do not do this program by myself, but unfortunately, Mike, once again, he's a little wrapped up, and so it's just going to be us today, but we always have a good time. Have a better time when Mike is here, but hey, you know what? We'll get her done, won't we? I'm sure we do. I have confidence in y'all like that. So anyway, let's go ahead and let's jump right into it. But let's start by giving a shout out to our sponsors. Let's see here. We're going to start with Hitman Industries. That's hitmanindustries.net. If you own an AR that you've purchased recently, well, chances are you already have one of their barrels. But if you're looking to rebarrel your current AR or maybe just do a new build, check them out. Go to hitmanindustries.net and get your rifle and pistol caliber barrels today. Also, the California Republican Assembly, Ronald Reagan referred to them as the conscience of the Republican Party, helping to elect conservatives from dog catcher all the way up to President of the United States, working to make sure to elect conservatives. So visit them at cragop.org and become part of California's future today. If you're looking for a holster, there's no better place to go than to Hog Holsters. That's helping America wear guns, and you can find them at hogholsters.com. And when you go there, use discount code The Rundown, all caps, no spaces, and get your discount today. Finally, if you're looking for outdoor gear, tactical gear, rain gear, for those of you in California right now, there's no better place to go than uscombatgear.com. It is the place to go to get all of your cool tactical gear. Integrity, folks, great prices, fast shipping, veteran-owned and operated, uscombatgear.com. All right, we're going to start right here once again. In the very beginning, there was a recent court ruling, and this court ruling had to do with Biden's migrant policy. Now, you're wondering what policy is that we are referring to? Well, it has to do in particular with his catch and release policy. So, the way in which it's been working is that if someone comes across and they get caught, they get all of their information and they give them a court date, and then they release them into the United States, telling them they have to show up for a court date sometime in the future. And an overwhelming majority of those folks actually wind up never returning or never showing up. So recently, a judge has cited that, sorry, Mr. Biden, but your parole policy or your catch and release policy, it's meaningless. Because basically what it says is we don't have a border. We're going to require you to show up to court, but there's no real consequences if you do not show up to court. In other words, they might as well just be allowed to sneak across the border or just let them on in. And then if we catch them later while they're here, well, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to keep them. And once again, this is for people who are seeking asylum. So, I think once again, it makes it very, very clear that the policies that they are seeking to do, the policies that Democrats would have implemented here in these United States, in particular there at the border, they make no sense. They're not consistent with U.S. law, and that's really what you have happening is while they say we have a quote unquote secure border, what's happening is they're just simply refusing to enforce immigration law. And that's it. And the people who are paying the price are number one, the border states, because they're the ones that are bearing the initial brunt of folks who are coming into the country illegally. People who are basically don't have jobs, people who may or may not have job skills, people who are especially with the some of the weather that we've been experiencing, people who are dealing with wet and cold and in some cases freezing temperatures. They're the ones that are having to make sure that the needs of these folks are met until they're able to either leave there, because in many cases they're going to other places in the United States like California, where they're going to join the largest homeless population in the entire country. That's right. California has 3/4 of the homeless people that are in the United States. But what they're not doing is they're not actually, once again, enforcing the law. And that has got to change. That is period, flat out got to change. And I think even folks in the legal system are stepping up and seeing the insanity of what it is that's taking place at our southern border and demanding that they take some positive steps in order to address it and get it right. Quite frankly, stop doing the woke stuff that they're doing. Stop doing just allowing people to come in at 2 million a year, 2 million people a year. Anyway, so it's going to be interesting to see what winds up happening. I'm sure that the Biden administration is going to challenge this. I'm sure they're going to push it up the court system. But I definitely see this thing. I definitely see this decision being upheld. All right, next, we've got Senate shooting down D.C. criminal policy. Now, the D.C. City Council, what they did was they passed a bunch of policies that basically said we're going to decriminalize crime. And we're going to allow criminals to basically walk the streets of Washington, D.C. And amid the national outcry regarding the lack of enforcement of laws, we're actually starting to see more and more, even Democrats are stepping up and saying, we kind of got to enforce the law. And that's what happened in the Senate. There were 14, there were only 14. Now think about that. There are a total of, there's supposed to be 51 Democrats. Two of them are out because of health. That would be Feinstein and Fetterman. I'm going to take that back. And then you've got on the Republican side, you've got one who was out via health. But this was yesterday. So that happened. So McConnell was there to vote. But in essence, you had overwhelmingly, with the exception of 14 Democrats, you had the Senate voted overwhelmingly to nix that code. Because once again, they're realizing you can't just if you do not enforce laws, if you do not have crimes, if you do not have laws that make certain things crimes, then you're going to wind up with anarchy on your streets. And one only need to go to San Francisco, one only need to go to Oakland, Chicago, Washington, D.C., in order to see the consequences of refusing to enforce laws. And they're realizing, many of them realizing that, we're up for re-election, and I absolutely positively am not going to give up re-election because I defended criminals. And, this is done, a lot of these laws are done because they're saying that, we're standing up for people of color who are disproportionately put into jail and prison. Well, what they're refusing to acknowledge is that disproportionately the victims of crime happen to also be people of color because people tend to victimize their own. So by locking people up who commit crimes, you may not be necessarily on the side of criminals who are criminals of color, but you are standing up for victims of color, for people, for your citizens, all of your citizens who might potentially be victims of the crimes that are being instituted or crimes that are being committed by these individuals. By removing the victimizers, you have less victims. And that's one of the things that every study that I've ever seen shows. You lock up people who do bad things, and the number of bad things that happen to people goes down. It ain't rocket science, but for some reason, Democrats seem to disagree with that, in particular if the people who are committing the crimes happen to be of a certain ethnicity. I don't care what ethnicity you are. If you are committing crimes, if you are harming people, if you are hurting people, you need to pay the price. And I don't see why that is controversial at all, but apparently with some folks, it is. All right, next we have here a California bill to keep violent criminals in jail. California killed this bill. Now, this one has an actual interesting twist to it. You may not know, but a member of one of the budget subcommittees, but also a member of the legislature, Miss Mia Bonta, is also the wife of the Attorney General, Rob Bonta. Now, Bonta is in a long line of Democrat attorney generals who refuse to enforce the law, who refuse to put criminals in jail. I don't know if he's George Soros funded, but if he's not, then George Soros is getting his will for free. In any case, there was a bill Now, this was amongst a number of gun control bills, all of which, by the way, were supported by Democrats. But this was a gun control bill that would have reinstituted mandatory minimums for those who commit crimes using a firearm. So, in other words, you commit a violent crime, a violent felony with a firearm, you're going to have a mandatory minimum. Well, Mia Bonta said, no, 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 no. We are not going to support that. We don't want criminals. Keep in mind, these are criminals. These are people who are in the commission of a robbery. These are people who are in the commission of burglary, assault, domestic violence, rape. If they used a gun, well, there's no additional charge to them. And by the way, these gun charges, there are these mandatory minimums. The benefit of being able to charge these is that in many cases they're able to extract a plea deal with a greater penalty than if you didn't have the mandatory minimum on there. But they don't care. They don't want that. She doesn't want that. She doesn't want criminals. She doesn't want people who commit crimes with guns to spend more time in jail. All she wants is law-abiding citizens who not who commit crimes. All she wants is law-abiding citizens who have guns and break a myriad of the very, very complicated firearms laws that we have here in the state of California. You forget to dot an I or cross a T. You should not, one, you should do jail time, but number two, you should lose your right to keep and bear arms forever. That's kind of how they see things. That's kind of how they do things here in California. And by the way, once again, this is the wife of the Attorney General. So, they're having some conversations about this. And he, by the way, used to serve in the legislature. And both of them are equally as unqualified to have anything to do with public safety. Because, that's just how they are. That's just who they are. I'm sorry, but they're not. They are not qualified to be discussing public safety, at least not in my eyes. All right, this last story here is kind of a sidebar from the whole January 6th conversation. A lot of people are talking about the videos, and they're talking about, the fact that they only went to Tucker Carlson. They're talking about how he's trying to portray what happened in a very different way than the way in which it happened. And, I'll go back and say what I said before. All he did was what the January 6th committee and the mainstream media did on the other side. They cherry-picked video in order to support a narrative. Although what they did was even greater, because what they also did was lie. And what was exposed was two of the very big lies. The one about Officer Sicknick being murdered on the day of the Capitol, because they still say 5 officers died that day. 5 officers did not die that day. That is a lie. That is a flat out lie. And it is a lie that they, once again, they continue often to repeat. The only person who was killed that day was killed by a law enforcement officer, and it was an unarmed Trump supporter. That's the only person who was killed that day. Anyway, that having been said, one of the other things that they lied about was the QAnon shaman. And I say that to say this. The very beginning, when they broke through the doors and in order to get inside, he was right there amongst the first of them. I don't know, because I didn't see any footage on the outside of the door to see what he engaged in. I just saw him coming in with the folks in the very beginning. But what I also noticed, once again, through the video that was shared there by Tucker Carlson, is he was pretty much just kind of walking around. And not only was he walking around, but he was being escorted around by police. And you had people, by the way, who were claiming that this guy should be shot. He stormed the Senate chambers. No, the Capitol Police opened the door for him to walk into the Senate chambers. But the funny thing is, now we'll go back to this. There are about 1,000 people who are on trial, who have been charged with crimes on that day, right? About 1,000 people. Almost none, or at least none of them that I know of. No one has reported that they have been given access to any of this footage, right? And here is the attorney for the QAnon shaman basically saying, no, when they were going through some of this stuff, they knew that they had this, and they absolutely refused to give it to them. Check it out.
The government knew through 3 hearings when we begged and pleaded to get this man out of solitary confinement, literally falling into an abyss mentally. And through each of those 3 hearings, that government assistant U.S. attorney knew the most important aspect of that hearing was that Jake was not violent. The government knew. They knew that Jake had walked around with all of these police officers. They had that video footage. I didn't get it. It wasn't disclosed to me. It wasn't provided to me. I requested it. I filed the requisite pleadings for it. And whether I did or not, they had a duty, an absolute duty, with 0 discretion to provide it to me so that I could share it with my client. I never got it.
Very simple question. It's shocking that this could happen and happen with the knowledge of Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and Chuck Schumer and all the ghouls around the story. How can this man still be in prison tonight? He's still in jail tonight, right now.
So what you got here is you have the attorney saying he requested it. And even if he didn't request it, they have a legal obligation through discovery to provide it. Whatever evidence they have. They had this evidence and they withheld it. Now, mind you, he wasn't convicted. He accepted a plea deal. He accepted a plea deal based on the information and the evidence that was available at the time. And the advice, obviously, that the attorney gave him was based on that evidence. Now, if he had this evidence, a couple of things. Number one, would he have been locked in solitary confinement if they could have shown the judge, look, here he is, he's walking around, he's not being violent, he's not doing anything violent. In fact, here's a video of him praying for the Capitol Police for helping him to get where he needed to go. All of that is included in that. And that was not shared. Would he, or let's put it this way, should he have been kept? Someone who had already had a history of mental health issues, should he have been kept in solitary confinement? One can argue whether or not he should have been, but here's the deal. Here's the thing. They had an obligation. They did not share it. I would not be surprised to see this conviction overturned, to see the courts come in and say, you know what, the federal government, you withheld evidence in this particular pleadings. We're going to throw out that pleading, and you're either going to have to go to trial, or I don't know, or maybe they'll just let him go. I don't know. But do not be surprised if you wind up seeing this case eventually being thrown out. Because of this, at least the plea deal wind up being thrown out because this guy's doing 3.5 years in jail. He's doing 3.5 years in jail for being escorted by police around the Capitol. Now, once again, I'm not saying he should have been in the building. I don't know what he did in terms of getting in, but I haven't seen all of the footage. So Tucker Carlson says it's pretty clear. Then they pretty much documented his entire time there. He said he did not engage in any violence inside the Capitol. If that evidence does exist, if there's evidence of him being violent inside the Capitol or threatening violence inside the Capitol, then we need to see that. But anyway, I think that once again, a lot more stuff. What I just find funny about all of this is these people are doubling down instead of just admitting that they were wrong. And that's amazing to me. It is amazing that they absolutely positively refuse to admit that, yeah, we engaged in our own level of, lies. And that's really all I could call it, is lies. Because they had a narrative that they wanted to push. There's a reason why they brought in a TV producer, because they wanted to make sure that every piece of video, every audio clip, everything that was done and said fit their narrative. They didn't want the truth. They wanted a story they had a story to tell. And they wanted to make sure that story was told the exact way in which they wanted. Now, Tucker Carlson did the same thing. I'll just tell you, he did the same thing. But you don't get to get mad when the other side tells their story the same exact way in which you told your story. But that seems to be exactly what we're hearing from Democrats in the mainstream media these days. All right, we're going to now move to Parting Shots, brought to you by Hog Holsters, helping America wear guns. Go to hogholsters.com and use discount code The Rundown to get your Hog Holster today. All right. In honor of women being recognized for International Women's Day yesterday, or Women's History Month, I thought I would share this one. It says, women have dominated female sports long enough. It's time for Women Plus to shine. And it's got a picture of, I believe they are playing rugby, and it's got a picture of a trans woman attempting to be tackled by a much, much smaller and less physically imposing woman, natural born or biological woman. And I'm willing to guess that that poor little woman's about to get trucked. That's my guess. And I'm probably not too far. I'm probably not too far off. Now, this next one, in honor of conspiracy theories, instead of calling them conspiracy theories, we should call them spoiler alerts. That's right, because there are a whole bunch of things that were deemed to be conspiracy theories not too long ago that we now know, at least at the very minimum, to be plausible. Can you say masks don't work? Or in particular, cloth masks don't work? Can you say vaccine does not grant you immunity? Can you say you can spread it with the vaccine? Can you say, what else? Can you say lab leak? All of these things, at the very least, are now considered to be plausible. They are legitimate, and some of them, for some of us, are more than plausible. But once again, I'm not going to get into that conversation because I don't want to, don't want to upset the YouTube demons. And finally, I don't know if you guys know this, but a significant number or percentage of Gen Zers and millennials actually believe in socialism, and this is for them. This is a picture at the very top. You've got socialists living in capitalism, and you've got a socialist sitting there with a cup of coffee, sitting there, nice green field, rainbow in the air, flowers, and there you've got the socialist saying, "This is unbearable," right? Because this is Bernie Sanders, who does tickets for his book tour, sells them for $100 or $200, but he talks about how evil capitalism is. But then you have here socialists living in socialism. And you've got the same socialist who is sitting there with a cup of coffee, and the entire place is on fire. The room is full of smoke, and it says, "This isn't real socialism." So in other words, when socialism is put in place, they say, "Oh, well, yeah, that's not really socialism. Cuba's not really socialism, or at least Cuba's not really what we know it to be, a repressive government that has starved its people at times, that has killed and imprisoned people who oppose their government. Venezuela is not, or Maoist China was not, or, these are not real socialist countries." Yeah, no, they are. And they've resulted, socialism/communism, because they're really the same thing, have resulted in the deaths of many, many millions of people across the globe. But they don't want to own that. That's not true, according to the socialists. I guess the only way in which they're going to experience it, they're going to believe it, is if they get a chance to experience it themselves. So good luck with that. Hopefully you'll get to experience it by going to another country and not experience it here in these United States. All right, let's go ahead and give a quick shout out to our sponsors before we go. We're going to start with Hitman Industries. You'll find them at hitmanindustries.net. Get your rifle and pistol caliber barrels today. Also, California Republican Assembly. Be a part of California's future today and join CRA. Also, Hog Holsters. Visit them at hogholsters.com and use discount code RUNDOWN. Get your discount today. All caps, no spaces, by the way. All caps, no spaces. And then finally, tactical gear, outdoor gear, rain gear, whatever you're looking for, find it at uscombatgear.com. And now we're going to call it a day. We appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program. encouraging your friends to do the same. We will be back tomorrow on Feedback Friday, looking for your input. Hope you guys enjoy the show. We'll see you tomorrow.